Hello viewers, today's lesson is on slow learners. The objective of studying this lesson is to understand the basic issues concerning the slow learners, that is the concept, the types of slow learners, the characteristics or symptoms, etiology or factors. The second objective is to plan developmental programs by having a knowledge on the diagnosis, treatment, management, therapies is also needed. When we hear the word slow learner, it itself defines that we are dealing with the children whose learning is at a very slow pace. In earlier days, slow learners were thought to be mentally retarded, but the studies proved that they are not mentally retarded. They are just like any other normal children. However, they differ from normal children in their rate of learning. They are unable to cope up with the work normally expected of their age. In many instances, they are referred under different names. The psychologists and educational research workers use a range of terms to define a child who does poorly at school. They use the terms like low achievers, underachievers, or educationally backward children, or learning retarded children, or dull normal children. Of all these terms, slow learners is the term that is widely used for these children. According to experts, the children who for various reasons fall behind in their schoolwork and require special teaching are called as educationally subnormal children. Slow children are the slow learners who are doing poorly in school. They are not eligible for special education. Why? Because their intelligence is more than that of the child who is considered as a mentally retarded children. According to Bird, the term backward or slow learner is reserved for those children who are not able to cope up with the work normally expected of their age. According to Jensen, the children or the students with an IQ of 80 to 90 who are considered as dull normal are those who are generally slow to catch up whatever is taught if the subject matter involves symbolic, conceptual or abstract information. In earlier grades of the school, they have a problem with reading, arithmetic and are labeled as slow learners. Being a slow learner is a lifelong problem. A slow learner is a child whose IQ is low enough to cause considerable difficulty in their classroom. Normally, these children have IQ range of 70 to 90. If a child has IQ of less than 70, then he is regarded as a mentally retarded child. But a slow learner does not have an IQ less than 70. His IQ is an average around 90 to 100. So, we can't consider them a mentally retarded child. Because of these reasons, unfortunately, these children are often overlooked and they are not given special education. They do not have learning disability or mental retardation, but they fail in school because of low intellectual capabilities or abilities. But they have other wide range of abilities and a variety of characteristics depending on their background. In the present system of education, students are identified as slow learners purely on the basis of their performance in examination. In most cases, it is deviating from the thing that is taught at the school. Because of this, even talented children are sometimes thought to be as slow learners or dullards. Now, we have a clear concept of who is a slow learner. A slow learner is the one whose performance is very dismissal in the examination, but he is neither mentally retarded nor he has low ranges of intelligence IQ. If intervention is given to these slow learners, they can perform much better in their academics. Since slow learners are not grouped as a separate diagnostic category, they are often overlooked and they are not considered as individuals who need intervention. Learning disabilities happen because of the way a person's brain takes in and processes the information. As a result, people learn differently. The only trick here is figuring out on how best you can learn. Parents and teachers can help you, and they can find out learning specialist or a school psychologist. These school psychologists can figure out what is the learning problem of the child and come up with the ideas for making it better. Now, we will see some of the distinguishing characteristics of a slow learner. They score consistently low on achievement test. They have below average ability in understanding the academic concepts. Their functional ability is also below that of their peer group or their classmates. They are more prone to immature interpersonal relationships, and they prefer playing with younger children. They tend to be ignored by peers and may not have common peer interest. They face difficulty in following multi-step directions. They have frequently impaired fine motor coordination, such as delayed ability in tying the shoelaces. And they have very few internal strategies, like in organization of information, a skill, or any other technology. They work on tasks at a very slow pace. Their learning mostly depends on the trial and error method of learning. They work well on with a hands-on material, like labs, picturized text, and manipulative materials. They master skills slowly and does not master some skills at all. Coming to classification. After identifying the slow learner, we will see how we can classify the slow learners. Slow learners can be classified into two types: the children requiring segregated setup, children requiring integrated setup. Children requiring segregated setup. These children are found to suffer from severe forms of learning retardation and educational backwardness on account of their limited abilities, like retarded mental development coupled with some other socio-psychological deficiencies. They require more attention and provisions for their schooling and academics, which often take the shape of special classes and special schools. The second type of classification is the children served in integrated setup. Here, the nature of the severity of this problem is very less. That means the learning retardation or the educational backwardness is less severe in these children, and they can be put up in integrated schools. But this type of children also is of two types: the general backwardness and specific backwardness. In general backwardness, the children lag behind in all the school subjects of the curriculum. In specific backwardness, the children lag behind specifically in one or two subjects of the school curriculum. After knowing about the distinguishing traits of the slow learners and classification of the slow learners, now we will see what are the symptoms of a slow learner, or what are the characteristics by which we can define a slow learner. Just saying a child is not doing in a class well, it does not make the student is a slow learner. Very few children excel in all the subject areas of a school curriculum. So, it is very essential for a parent or a teacher to examine in depth the scores of the standardized test to look for the trends. Also, a slow learner is different from a reluctant learner. A slow learner initially wants to learn, but he has a problem with the process. A reluctant learner is not at all motivated. He can be passively aggressive. He is a problem for the teachers and also a parent because he is not cooperating with them in the process of learning. So, we should not get confused between a slow learner and a reluctant learner. A reluctant learner seldom has learning disabilities, whereas remember that a slow learner has the problem with the process of learning. He is motivated to learn, but he has got a problem with learning. Now, we will see what are general characteristics of a slow learner. They have low intelligence and academic performance, but they do not qualify for special education for either cognitive or learning disabilities. They perform at a higher level when information is given to them on a concrete basis. Abstract thinking is more difficult for them. They have a difficulty in transferring of skills or generalization of the skills, knowledge and strategies. They have trouble cognitively organizing new information and also in assimilating incoming information into already acquired information. They have difficulty with long-term goals and time management. They get benefited from increased academic engaged time. They often require extra practice and more time on task to develop the same level of academic skills as their peer group. The academic characteristics. They lag behind in subjects like mathematics because they have a problem with concept grasping power. They do not have this concept grasping power, because of which they continuously fail in mathematics. Reading, spelling and comprehension is also below their expected level. Why? This is because they tend to rote learn and they do not understand the work. They have poor memory and lack of imagination and creative thinking. They have poor vocabulary development and untidy written work. This untidy written work is because of the problem with fine motor development. They have problem with perception, both visual and auditory. They are not able to write long answers or essays. These are some of the problems which a slow learner faces academically. Now we will see what are the behavioral characteristics or symptoms of a slow learner. They have slow self-esteem and they lack self-confidence. They are very shy, they are timid and at times very quiet. And they can also be aggressive and disruptive and becoming the clown of the class. They have untidy appearance and always misplaces the things. Not only this, they are all the time afraid and anxious. They sometimes show psychosomatic ailments like a rash, stomachache, headache, nausea and sometimes asthma also. These are some of the behavioral symptoms of a slow learner. All educators and tutors do not look to the cause of slow learning. This is because they focus mainly on the school subject and their grades. In teachers' training, misconceptions of all these slow learners are removed. See, learning depends, it's a factor of a brain, but the teachers and parents do not look at it like that. They have the focus on the subject matter and grades. They do not look into the answers in the brain. We can't define slow learners in one way. It is because of the hidden handicap as a result of faulty wiring in the brain. Because of this, the child, even with the average or above average intelligence, has a trouble in reading and writing because he is unable to process information taken in by the eyes, ears or touch. If the child is showing the signs of slow learning, it does not mean the child is a slow learner. Or if the child is failing in one or two subjects, it does not mean the child is a slow learner. There are many factors contributing to the process of slow learning. We will see some of the factors which leads to slow learning in students. The first foremost important factor is the environment. Children react to their environment in early stages. He learns from the environment in which they grow. A secure environment flourishes the abilities in positive direction. Studies show that the children coming for better environments have better progress in their academics. The second most important factor is opportunities for learning. Opportunities for learning help the child to improve their cognitive abilities. The parents should provide a rich learning environment to their children. They can give simple play activities and games to enhance their thinking skills. Next factor is absenteeism. Absenteeism means keeping often absent from the school. It also leads to the process of slow learning. If the child is continuously absent from the school, the classwork keeps up pending up, he will not be able to follow what is happening in the class. He cannot adjust along with their peers, and all this result in disinterest with the studies, slowly making a normal student into a slow learner. The next important factor is illiterate parents. These illiterate parents will not be able to provide good environment or rich learning environment for the children, and this leads to slow learning process of the child. Untrained teacher. An untrained teacher is another important factor to make a normal child into a slow learner. If the teacher is not trained, he or she will not be able to understand the problem the student is facing, and they cannot help out the child initially, or early intervention will not be provided to the child. So, the child loses interest in the subject and becomes a slow learner. The next important factor is class size. Even if we find the teacher trained, oversized class affects the learning process. If the class size is more than 30, because of the excess number of students, the teacher may not give attention to each and every student and understand her students properly, leading to the process of slow learning. Next factor is the family size. Like an oversized class, if the family size is big, the parent cannot provide the resources, the opportunities or the environment to help the child progress in his academics and makes a child into a slow learner. Not only these problems, the health problem is another factor hindering the development of the child. Poor health plays an important role in the growth and development of the child. If the child's health is not good, it leads to the process of slow learning. Next factor is the psychological problems. Because of high expectations of the family, of parents and the teachers, it creates a psychological stress, and without proper support and guidance, the child loses interest in the studies and becomes a slow learner. These are some of the factors which affect a normal child to become into a slow learner. Now, we will see the problems faced by a slow learner. Typically, a slow learner has difficulty with the high order thinking or reasoning skills. This suggests that it will be more challenging for them to learn new concepts. New skill is based on the already mastered concepts. When the whole class has mastered the concept and is moving forward, the slow learner does not understand the new skill and he will not be able to keep the pace with the classmates. This widens the gap between the knowledge and skills among the peer group. This leads to gaps in knowledge and basic skills. The first problem is the cognitive learning problem. These slow learners learn at a slow rate and they have difficulty in retaining what they have learned. They prefer concrete learning to abstract learning. The transfer of learning becomes impossible for them. They gain from direct teaching. They have very short span of attention. Language related problems. The verbal expression are difficult. Oral reading is more difficult than silent reading. They face articulation problems. Expression of thought becomes difficult for them. Auditory perception problems. They face trouble in writing from dictation. They fail to understand verbal directions. They prefer visually presented material to orally presented material. They have difficulty in distinguishing between similar sounding words like tip, tap, pen, pen, etc. They give inappropriate answers to verbal questions. Visual motor problems. They are easily distracted by visual stimuli. They have difficulty in discriminating between colors, sizes and shapes. They are not able to recall the object that they have already seen, and they have very poor handwriting because of the gross motor problems. Socio-emotional problems. These slow learners have a problem sitting for long periods in the class. They cannot make friends very easily and they daydream a lot. They become aggressive towards their friends and peers on trivial matters. Nail biting is another interesting character of them. They have mood swings or their mood changes very frequently, and they do not prefer group work. After seeing the problems faced by the slow learners, we will go into the techniques that help the slow learner in the process of learning. Slow learners are often confused with the students in need of special education or reluctant learners who are non-cooperative. A student who fails to excel in some class or in some subject doesn't imply that he or she is a slow learner. However, resorting to some of the teaching aids available to special education students, it may enhance the interest of slow learner and help them get involved in the learning process. Actually, slow learners are normal students who are simply not interested in studying under a traditionally accepted method of education. And several students in a class fall under this category, but most parents or guardians prefer to remain in a denial mood. A student is commonly called a slow learner if he is having a problem in learning at an average rate from the instruction material like the textbooks, workbooks, exercises books and other activities which are designed for an average child of the class. These students need special instructional pacing, frequent feedback, corrective instruction and other modified material, all administered under conditions sufficiently flexible for learning to occur. Now, we will see what are the techniques that we can use to help the slow learner in the process of learning. The first important technique is compensatory teaching technique. In compensatory teaching technique, it is an instructional approach that alters the presentation of content. It includes the visual presentation of the content and it supplements with additional learning resources and activities. Remedial teaching, this is an alternate approach to the regular classroom teaching in instructing the slow learner. Remedial teaching is the use of activities, techniques and practices to eliminate weakness or deficiencies that the slow learner is known to have. A conventional instructional technique such as drill and practice might be employed. The next technique is the instructional strategies for slow learners. While there is no single or a set of techniques sufficient teaching the slow learner, suggestions that follow a starting point for developing instructional strategies that specifically address the learning needs of a slow learner. For some of the techniques for incorporating the lessons with the students' interests, needs and experiences. Frequently varying the instructional techniques. Switching from lecture to discussion to group activities provides variety for the slow learners and helps him to stay engaged in the learning process. Another important strategy is to incorporate audiovisual aids. As we have already known, the student who is a slow learner has difficulty in reading. If we have more audio and visual aids, that helps the slow learner in the process of learning and helps them to retain what has been learnt. Developing worksheets and exercises. Textbooks and workbooks, when written for the average student, they often exceed the functional level of the slow learner. Sometimes only a few changes are needed in the worksheets and exercises because they have a difficulty in reading and understanding what is given and following the instructions. So, a few changes can help a slow learner in the process of learning. The last instructional strategy is providing a peer tutoring. It is very effective for a slow learner. Now, we will see some general strategies which support learning in slow learners. As we know, slow learner gets reduced by distractions. We can reduce the distraction by providing a quiet, private place to work. A slow learner needs to be emphasized his strength. We can use a lot of praise about the strengths and reinforce what has been learned very frequently. We can cut short the lessons, make the lessons short. Instead of having long work periods, have several short work periods. We can add variety to the academic routine. We can have active things, educational games and puzzles which makes learning fun and enjoyable. Work on material that is somewhat challenging, but it should allow success. If the work is too hard or too easy, then it is a put off for the slow learner. Adaptations in teaching slow learners. We can have few adaptations in testing the slow learner. While the slow learner is giving test, we can use some of the techniques to help him to successfully complete his test. Few of them are: for students with reading difficulties, read the test to them. Providing a study guide to help the students study before the test is another important technique which helps the students to successfully complete the test. Give them untimed test. As we already know, one of the characteristics of the slow learner is he needs an extra time. So, give them a test without a time limit. Let the child try the whole test, but we can circle any 10 questions that can be scored. Sometimes another important and useful technique is giving the slow learner an open book test. Let him take the test from assistance with the classwork and complete the test. These are a few adaptive techniques to help the slow learner to perform better in his academics. Coming to the summary of this lesson, we have understood who is called a slow learner. We have understood that a slow learner is not mentally retarded, but he has IQ between 90 to 100. He is only slow in the rate of learning in comparison to his peer group. We have understood the characteristics or symptoms of a slow learner. We have understood the problems slow learners are facing, which are cognitive related, academic related and behavior related problems. We have understood how to help these slow learners through instructional strategies and adaptive techniques while testing the slow learner. After learning about this lesson, slow learners, I think we can help our friends who are slow in their learning process, as we have understood that peer tutoring is very effective for slow learners. Thank you.